What if becoming rich is not mainly about earning more money? Most people believe wealth begins with a bigger salary. They think the solution is to get a better job, work longer hours, receive a promotion, or become highly skilled at something valuable. But Robert Kiyosaki argues that income alone is not the same as wealth. You can earn a lot of money and still struggle financially. You can have an impressive job title, an expensive car, and a large house while remaining completely dependent on your next paycheck. The real question is not only how much money do you make? The more important question is where does your money come from? And what happens if you stop working? This is the central idea behind Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. The quadrant is a simple framework that divides the way people earn money into four categories: employee, self employed, business owner, and investor. Kiyosaki's argument is that if all of your money comes from your own time and effort, you may have income, but you do not yet have true financial freedom. And without cash flow, you may never become wealthy in the way you imagine. Now, this does not mean that every employee is poor or that every business owner is rich. It also does not mean you should quit your job tomorrow and start buying investments you do not understand. The cash flow quadrant is a framework for thinking about money. It helps you understand the difference between working for money and building systems that produce money. So let's begin with the first side of the quadrant. The first category is the employee. Employees earn money by working for an organization or another person. They exchange their time, skills, and effort for a salary or wages. This is the most common way people earn money. You go to work, complete your responsibilities, receive a paycheck, and use that paycheck to pay for your life. There is nothing wrong with being an employee. In fact, employment can provide stability, training, health benefits, professional experience, and a reliable source of income. The problem begins when your entire financial life depends on your job. If your paycheck stops, your ability to pay your bills may stop with it. Imagine someone who earns $8,000 per month. That sounds like a strong income. But suppose they spend $7,900 every month on rent, loans, subscriptions, restaurants, transportation, and lifestyle expenses. They may look successful from the outside, but their financial position is fragile. Now imagine someone else who earns $4,500 per month, lives below their means, invests consistently, and owns assets that produce $1,500 in monthly cash flow. The second person earns less from their job, but they may have more control over their future. This is the difference between income and cash flow. Income is money coming in because of work or activity. Cash flow is the money that continues moving through your financial life after expenses are considered. A high income can help you build wealth, but only if some of that income is converted into assets. Otherwise, you can spend your entire life earning more and still remain financially dependent on your next paycheck. This is why many people become trapped in what can be called the income treadmill. They earn more, so they spend more. They receive a raise, so they upgrade their car. They get a better job, so they move into a more expensive home. They increase their income, but their financial pressure increases at the same time. The paycheck gets bigger, but freedom does not. The second category in the cash flow quadrant is the self-employed person. A self-employed person may own their own work, but they are often still dependent on their own time. They might be a doctor, consultant, lawyer, designer, freelancer, coach, photographer, or independent contractor. The difference is that they do not work for a traditional employer. They work for themselves. This can provide more independence and control, but it can also create a hidden problem. If the business stops when the owner stops working, then the owner may not actually own a business. They may own a job. A freelance designer who must personally complete every project is self-employed. A consultant who cannot take a vacation because clients depend entirely on them is self-employed. A doctor who earns nothing when they are not seeing patients is self-employed. These people may earn excellent incomes, but their income is still directly tied to their time. If they stop working, the cash flow may stop. This is an important distinction because many people believe that starting a business automatically makes them business owners. But a business is not just a logo, a website, or a social media page. A real business is a system that can continue creating value even when the owner is not personally doing every task. That leads us to the third category, the business owner. A business owner builds systems. They may hire employees, create processes, develop products, automate operations, or build a brand that serves customers without requiring the owner to personally perform every part of the work. The business owner's goal is not simply to work harder. The goal is to build something that works. This is where leverage becomes important. An employee usually has a limited number of hours in a day. A self-employed person may increase their income by becoming more skilled, but their time is still limited. A business owner can create systems, use technology, hire people, and serve many customers without personally handling every transaction. This does not mean business ownership is easy. In reality, building a business can require more work, more risk, and more responsibility than having a job. Many businesses fail. Many business owners struggle with debt, employees, taxes, customers, and unpredictable revenue. But the potential difference is that a business can continue producing cash flow beyond the owner's individual working hours. That is why business ownership can create a path toward greater financial independence. The fourth category is the investor. Investors use money to acquire assets that have the potential to produce more money. An asset might generate income, increase in value, or both. Examples can include businesses, stocks, bonds, real estate, royalties, or other investments. The important idea is that the investor is not primarily earning money by trading hours for dollars. The investor is putting capital to work. This is the point where many people misunderstand wealth. They see a wealthy person buying an expensive house, driving a luxury car, or wearing expensive clothing. But those things do not automatically create wealth. Some possessions take money away from you every month. An asset, in the financial sense, has the potential to put money into your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. This is why financial education matters. Before asking, "Can I afford this payment?" you should ask, "Is this purchase creating cash flow or is it creating another expense?" A luxury car may bring comfort or status, but it usually requires fuel, insurance, maintenance, and payments. An investment that produces income may not look impressive, but it may be working quietly in the background. The wealthy person is not necessarily the person who owns the most expensive things. The wealthy person is often the person who owns the most productive assets. Now, here's where the title becomes important. Why will you never be rich without cash flow? Because without cash flow, your lifestyle depends on your labor. You may be able to earn money, but you cannot build flexibility. You cannot easily handle emergencies. You cannot take time away from work. You cannot reinvest confidently. You cannot survive a sudden loss of income for very long. Cash flow gives you options. It gives you the ability to make decisions based on what is right, instead of being forced to choose based only on what pays immediately. But cash flow does not mean money magically appears without effort. This is where many online conversations about passive income become misleading. Most passive income requires something before it becomes passive. It may require money, time, education, risk, relationships, skills, or years of consistent work. A rental property may produce income, but it can also require maintenance, repairs, insurance, taxes, and management. A business may eventually operate without you, but it may take years to build. An investment portfolio may produce returns, but it can also lose value. So the lesson is not that cash flow is effortless. The lesson is that you should gradually build sources of income that are not completely dependent on your daily labor. This can begin with something very simple. First, understand where your money is currently coming from. Is all of it coming from one job? Do you have any income from investments, a side business, digital products, royalties, or other assets? Second, understand where your money is going. Many people focus only on earning more, while ignoring the leaks in their financial system. They do not know how much they spend on convenience, debt payments, subscriptions, impulse purchases, or lifestyle upgrades. If money enters your life and disappears immediately, increasing your income may not solve the deeper problem. Third, create a gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is what gives you the ability to save, invest, learn, and build. Without a gap, you have no capital. Without capital, it becomes harder to create assets. And without assets, you remain dependent on active income. This is why the first step toward financial freedom is often not becoming rich. It is becoming financially aware. You need to know your numbers. You need to understand your expenses. You need to know how much debt you have. You need to know which purchases are helping your future and which purchases are only satisfying the present. The fourth step is to develop skills that can increase your future earning power. Financial freedom is not only about saving money, it is also about becoming more valuable. Learn how to communicate. Learn how to sell. Learn how to create. Learn how to manage money. Learn how businesses work. Learn how investments work before risking your money. The more valuable skills you develop, the more choices you may have in the future. But remember, the goal is not simply to move from employee to business owner as quickly as possible. The goal is to understand how each quadrant can support your financial life. A job can provide the money you need to invest. Self-employment can help you develop expertise. A business can create systems. Investing can help your money grow and produce income. You do not have to reject one quadrant completely. You can use them together. For example, someone might work as an employee, start a small business on the side, invest a portion of their income, and gradually reduce their dependence on a single paycheck. That is a much more realistic path than quitting your job with no savings and hoping a business will immediately succeed. Now, we should also examine the limitations of Kiyosaki's ideas. The cash flow quadrant is useful, but it is not a complete financial plan. It does not tell you exactly which investments to buy. It does not remove the risks of entrepreneurship. It does not guarantee that moving into the business owner or investor quadrant will make you rich. Some employees become extremely wealthy through disciplined saving, investing, and long-term ownership. Some business owners work for decades and never create reliable cash flow. Some investors lose money because they invest without understanding what they own. So do not treat the quadrant like a law of nature. Treat it as a question. Where am I earning money from today? Where would I like to earn money from in the future? What skills, assets, or systems would help me move in that direction? The most important shift is not from one letter to another. It is from dependence to ownership. When you are completely dependent on your labor, every month begins with pressure. When you own productive assets, you begin to create a financial foundation that can support you beyond your daily work. This does not happen overnight. It begins with small decisions. You spend less than you earn. You eliminate unnecessary debt. You build an emergency fund. You learn how investing works. You improve your skills. You create something useful. You reinvest instead of immediately upgrading your lifestyle. You choose assets over appearances. And you repeat those decisions long enough for the results to become visible. Most people want the result of wealth without the process that creates it. They want passive income without first building anything valuable. They want financial freedom without changing their spending habits. They want investments without learning how investments work. They want a business without serving customers. But cash flow is usually the result of value. If you want to create cash flow, you need to create or own something that people find valuable. A business solves a problem. A product provides a benefit. A service saves time or creates a result. An investment provides capital to something productive. The more clearly you understand value, the more clearly you understand wealth. So ask yourself one final question. If your main income disappeared tomorrow, how long could your current financial life continue? 1 week? 1 month? 6 months? More than a year? Your answer is not a judgment of your character. It is simply information. And information gives you a starting point. If your answer is uncomfortable, do not panic. Start by tracking your money. Build a small financial cushion. Learn one valuable skill. Look for one realistic way to increase your income. Then direct part of that additional income toward assets instead of immediately increasing your expenses. Over time, the goal is to make your money less dependent on your time. That is the core lesson of the cash flow quadrant. Being rich is not simply about having a large income. It is about having control. Control over your time. Control over your decisions. Control over your ability to survive setbacks. And control over whether your financial life depends entirely on your next paycheck. Robert Kiyosaki's framework may not answer every question about money, but it forces you to ask a question that many people avoid. Are you only earning money Or are you building something that can continue producing money? Because a high income can improve your lifestyle, but cash flow can improve your freedom. And the difference between the two may determine whether you spend your entire life working for money or eventually allow money and assets to work for you. If this video gave you a new way to think about wealth, subscribe to Wisdoms from Giants. This channel is about learning from the greatest minds in history and turning their ideas into practical lessons for modern life. Then write one answer in the comments. Which quadrant are you currently in? And which quadrant do you want to move toward? You do not need to change your entire financial life today. Start by understanding where your money comes from, where it goes, and what you can begin building next. Because wealth does not begin when you become rich. It begins when you stop thinking only about earning money and start thinking about creating cash flow.